There's a total of 93 theme decks available on PTCGO. Unfortunately, most of them are garbage and you should never ever spend your coins on them, unless of course you're a crazy person like me and have to own one of everything. With so many theme decks in the shop, it can be hard for a new player to make the right choices early on, so I'm here to help make that decision easy by counting down the top 5 theme decks of all time, though I guess we'll be counting up since I'm starting with the best. Now, I say all time because for an unannounced reason, the Pokemon Company stopped making theme decks in November 2020 with the release of Vivid Voltage. The obvious theory is that in-person tournaments and in-person battling and in-person anything weren't happening at the time, so that might be the reason. And we also saw the introduction of V-Battle decks, so we might see a new V-Battle deck format in the future. But that's all up in the air, and all we know right now is that theme decks have not been made since November 2020, and there's no plans for any new theme decks anytime soon. Now, in my previous video about theme decks, it was very much my opinion of what was best following a few games with each. Since then, there have been several online theme deck tournaments, so I'll be mostly pulling from those results while also mixing in a bit of bias on my part to spice things up. Before we begin, you'll notice that there aren't any Sword and Shield decks on the list. This isn't to say they're horrible across the board, just underpowered in terms of supporters and attackers, and energy acceleration is super tough to come by. To give a quick tier list on these theme decks, I'd say the top 3 are Charizard, Zamazenta, and Rillaboom, with Dreadnought coming in 4th, and I will have more on the Charizard theme deck in my next video and how to turn it into a standard deck, so stay tuned for that. And the Sword and Shield theme decks you should definitely avoid are Cinderace, Inteleon, and Zacian. I have never really had success with them, so I would stay away from them. With all of that out of the way, let's get started at the top with the best theme deck money can buy, Soaring Storm. I'll admit that I was wrong about Soaring Storm. It is consistently the best theme deck in tournaments, and it's not hard to see why. Early on, you can use Alolan Grimer to draw 2 cards for free. Then I would suggest manually attaching to Tornadus to set up the Great Spread attack, which does 80 base damage plus 20 to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon, so long as you have Thundurus on the bench. While you're busy spreading damage, you want to be building up a Dratini, then a Dragonair, then finally a Dragonite on your bench. Dragonite can accelerate 2 energy into play each turn, basically ensuring you can use each Pokemon's best attack each turn. And as a bit of advice, Dragonite's attack requires 4 energy, so if you ever have the opportunity, attach an energy to it early on, because you can only put 3 energy into play on your turn with 1 Dragonite and a manual attachment. So if you ever need to take a big knockout with Dragonite, you want to have that energy there before you need it. So attach it when you can. And on top of the 4 cards on the screen, there's a Pidgeotto in the deck to draw you an extra card each turn, and Lantern works as an experience share, taking energy from your active Pokemon if it gets knocked out. The deck is just really good, it's consistent, and it's capable of beating anything, and it doesn't really have to worry about weakness in most theme deck matchups. Coming in at number 2, we have Stormcaller. While the skill level of Stormcaller may be the highest of them all, the strategy is actually fairly simple. Get Ampharos up and running as soon as possible, then use its ability to send 2 energy to the Lost Zone, paralyzing your opponent's active Pokemon in the process, then start swinging with either Ampharos' Split Bomb attack to deal 50 damage to 2 Pokemon, or use Raikou's attack to deal 120 damage because you put that energy in the Lost Zone. And thanks to something like Naganadel, you can put any energy you sent into the discard pile early back into play, then use Energy Switch to put it to an Ampharos or a Raikou, and that way you can keep as much energy in your hand as possible for later on in the game. The reason the skill level is high with this deck is because you have to be aware of your energy resources at all times, making sure to never get rid of too much energy that you cost yourself at the end of the game, and making sure to only paralyze your opponent's active when the time is right. But if you play your cards right, you could put your opponent in a position where they can't attack for several turns in a row, and you basically just take charge of the game from that point with them not even being able to do anything. So that is why Stormcaller is in 2nd place. While some may disagree with Unseen Depths in 3rd place, I stand by this decision 100%. Unseen Depths is the best water theme deck, meaning that you have a weakness advantage over both Charizard decks, which see a pretty good amount of play in theme. The strategy with this deck is start Apom. You start Apom and things get so much easier. Just attach an energy to Apom on turn 1, then do everything you can to evolve into Ambipom on turn 2, and just like that you're dealing 120 damage each turn with Bye Bye Throw. While you're doing that, get a Piplup on your bench and get it into an Empoleon as quickly as you can because it's an absolute game wrecker. Thanks to its recall attack, you can snipe any of your opponent's bench Pokemon for a single energy turn after turn, taking some really cheap prizes. And Kyogre is also a good Pokemon to put in the active on a turn where you have nothing going on, because it accelerates energy from your discard that may have been discarded with Ambipom or Roller Skater. And Unseen Depths is also one of the very few theme decks that actually plays a Stadium card in Viridian Forest, and that one just helps you make sure you have energy turn after turn. Relentless Flame was the best deck in theme for a long time, but it's definitely fallen with age, placing in 4th. Despite that, the power clearly remains. The best starter in this deck is Farfetch'd because it can draw you cards each turn and even deal a bit of damage if you need to. While Farfetch'd is doing its thing, I'd say Ponyta is the best bench Pokemon because it can evolve into Rapidash. Rapidash's second attack only does 60 damage, but the secondary effect can just win you the game outright. If you flip heads, Rapidash can't be damaged next turn. It is absolutely insane, and while your opponent is frustrated, you can be evolving into Charizard and Nidoqueen in the back, and since Charizard accelerates energy to itself each turn, you can take big knockouts without even trying, while putting your energy on Nidoqueen each turn to prep it for a big late game attack. Oh, and Nidoqueen can just get you any Pokemon you need every single turn. Yeah, the card is nuts, the deck is nuts. Sure, it's fallen on hard times, but it's still really, really good. And finally, we have Towering Heights. Honestly, it came down between this and the Charizard theme deck from Vivid Voltage, but I decided to go with the consistency of the Groudon theme deck and the power of Garchomp. If you go behind on prizes, Garchomp can deal 160 damage for 2 energy. You also have a great energy accelerator in Groudon, and while Palpitoad damages your bench, Throw can sneak in there with 120 damage for 2 energy. There's just the right amount of synergy with this deck that I couldn't put Charizard in this spot. And I mean, being able to deal 200 damage in theme for 2 energy with Garchomp, that is absolutely insane. And that'll do it. What are your thoughts on theme decks? Let me know in the comments, and if you want to tell me how wrong I am about the listing, you can do it live each day on Twitch. And to wrap up the video, I will say that basically anything between Stormcaller and Towering Heights is going to be what you want to aim for. The rest, you pretty much want to avoid except those few Sword and Shield ones that I mentioned. And with that, I will sign off. Thank you for watching. I will see you tomorrow with another new video.